What's up, everyone? Matt Gajewski here, back again talking college football. And today we are going to go through the LSU roster and what to expect for 2025. Before we get started, please subscribe, like the video, leave a comment if you would like. All of that does help us in the analytics show. A lot of you are watching this are unsubscribed. It is free and pretty easy to do. So if you've done that, thank you. It truly does help a lot, especially for a small channel like this. All right, it is April the 24th, and we are talking LSU. There's one more day of the portal, at least players entering it. Once you're in, you can commit somewhere throughout the summer. Hopefully not too much more movement, and LSU's already had a lot of it. Let's go into what happened last year briefly for LSU. Here are the 2024 efficiency metrics. And for as much talent as LSU has had, this has actually been a team that has struggled in some areas quite a bit last year. On offense, for all they did passing the ball with Nussmeier, Kyron Lacey, Will Campbell, the excellent offensive line pass blocking, they had a really bad run game. Their run game was in the 90s in total efficiency, and they also didn't have good run blocking metrics. For a team with such strength, at least at the tackle positions, there was a lot of problems run blocking. On defense, they go out and hire a new DC to come in and fix everything. They finished 51st in 2023. They actually dropped 3 spots last year, and they improved in coverage. That was their biggest weakness back in 2023 before they hired Blake Baker, and their coverage did improve, but their run defense dropped all the way to 92nd. They had some injuries, so that is at least worth noting. The offense, very pass heavy, which shouldn't surprise anyone considering their deficiencies running the ball. They had a 59% pass rate, around average seconds per play. But overall, this team finishes with a record of 9-4. They lose their opener to USC. It was like a carbon copy and paste repeat of 2023, where they had every opportunity to win that opener and just dropped it. Everything that happened in season, the Texas A&M loss, the Bama loss, the Florida loss, there's no shame in any of those. They were all relatively close except for Alabama as well. Best win is probably against Ole Miss. But overall, it is not what you would expect for an LSU team who has aspirations to win national championships. And that's been the story of Brian Kelly's tenure as he enters season 4 with LSU after he came over from Notre Dame. He's 29-11, has at least 9 wins every season, which is awesome on paper. But you're still missing playoff appearances. You're still losing players to the NFL every single year, and elite players at that. You're losing Brian Thomas Jr., Malik Neighbors, Jaden Daniels. And there's no reason that you shouldn't be in the college football playoff with these NFL stars. This year, you're losing Will Campbell. The list goes on. You're losing NFL players on defense. It's just very hard to argue that this team has overachieved or even lived up to expectation considering some of the talent they've had on the roster. But there's a lot of continuity. Every one of the coaching staff, at least among the main coaches, are still there. Kelly's there. Offensive coordinator Joe Sloan is there. Second year is OC. He was the QB's coach before that. LSU is going to have a good pass game under Sloan. I think we can all see that with Garrett Nussmeier back. DC, Blake Baker, he definitely had his work cut out for him. But the problem has never been elite recruits or players on the field. They have not been able to develop these players and maximize them. Baker comes over from Missouri last year. He was the DC there, but he has experience with LSU. He was on the staff in 2022 where he coached linebackers. Just a concern that this team actually dropped 3 spots in overall defense when that was the biggest thing. People were anointing him the savior. Blake Baker's coming in. He's going to fix all these recruits. So what happened? And this year we'll see. Recruiting-wise, LSU's a good recruiting team. They've been dropping. They went from 5 to 7 to 10, and their retention's been poor. There's no way around this. Their 2023 class, which finished 5th in the country, they only have 38% of those guys still on the roster. Last year's class is down to 86, which is a fine number. They have a lot of those players back. But the players that you're trying to develop, Brian Kelly's recruiting classes that he's first bringing in, a lot of people will say he needs 3 or 4 years to actually develop his players. Well, if they're not on the roster, you can't develop them. So this is a problem for LSU retention, and they have not lived up to expectations. So maybe you could argue Brian Kelly doesn't want them on the roster. That is fair. But let's dive into that roster now that we've seen recruiting and everything else. We'll take you to our 2 deep depth chart that we have. This basically looks at every single player, gives you a projection for where they should be on the 2 deep depth chart. And then we have snaps played the last 2 years, recruiting ranking in terms of what their star was, and a value score. The value score is basically your recruiting ranking first and foremost. And then as you start to play snaps, your recruiting ranking is factored in less and your on-field play is factored in more and more the further you're removed away from that recruiting ranking initially when you get to campus. Transfers are in yellow, injured players are in red. LSU was really messing around, holding out a lot of players in the spring with injuries. So I didn't include those because it seems to be a lot of bumps and bruises. So right, we have the transfer portal, and to the right of that, we have the departures both on offense and defense. At quarterback, Garrett Nussmeier is back, a surprising return very, very early in the draft process. He was receiving a lot of hype as a potential first-round draft pick, which he definitely has that level of talent with his arm. But he decides to return to school for his second year as starter. Last year, he finished 19th overall in total quarterback efficiency, 64% completion, over 4,000 yards, 7.7 yards per attempt, 29 touchdowns, 12 picks. Turnovers can be a problem with him. He did have 18 turnover-worthy plays, but 26 big-time throws. Definitely threw him out of some games, some very competitive games where he needed to go hero mode. But he's just a 0 on the ground, negative 38 rushing yards, which is going to hurt. Just no mobility whatsoever is a detriment in today's college football. He's 6'2", 200 pounds of decent size, good NFL arm. He's one of the better, I think you could argue perhaps the best returning quarterback in the SEC, a conference that has uncharacteristically more turnover at the position than normal this year, but awesome player, best player on offense. Running back, we have Caden Durham back for this team for a sophomore season. He's the 4-star. It took them a long time to figure out that Durham was their best back. They basically slammed Josh Williams and Caleb Jackson into the back of the offensive line repeatedly, down after down after down. But then eventually Durham gets onto the field, carries 140 times, 753 yards. That's 5.4 yards per carry, 28 catches. Got hurt, so he could not stand up to a full workload. He was a freshman. Hopefully one more year in an LSU weight room will benefit him. They get back one of those plotters, Caleb Jackson, for a change of pace. He averaged 3.4 yards per carry. He was horrible. I think there's a really good chance he falls down the depth chart. The biggest news headline with him this offseason is that he's losing weight. Just a rule of thumb, if your players, at least at running back, the offseason headline is that they're losing weight, it's implying they were bad to begin with, and the weight loss is going to help them, which generally all it means is that he'll slam into the back of the O-line with more velocity. There's a good chance Caleb Jackson just falls down the depth chart because they're getting back Trey Holly. Allegedly, he was suspended last year, former 4-star. They have a 5-star coming in Harlem Berry. I would waste no time getting him on the field. And they have a second 4-star in JT Lindsay on the roster, too. There's no reason to have Caleb Jackson carry the ball as much as he did last year. Receiver, a position with a lot of change. You're losing Kyron Lacey, of course. They do return their top wide receiver, Aaron Anderson. He caught 61 balls for 884 yards and 5 scores. He's a little smaller, 5'8", 187. Did play 89% of his snaps in the slot, but he had a solid 2.27 yards per route. And from there, it looks like LSU is going to rely a lot on transfers, which makes sense to me. They didn't get a ton out of this position last year. Nick Anderson comes in from Oklahoma, and Barian Brown comes over from Kentucky. Anderson played in 1 game last year. He was hurt the entire year, 6'4", 219. Back in 2023 with Oklahoma, he had 796 yards on 38 catches. Big boundary receiver, solid efficiency, 2.43 yards per route. Barian Brown has seen basically a decline every year he's been in college. He's a 4-star, played with Kentucky, had an awesome 2022 season, 51 catches for 625 yards, 2.2 yards per route. But last year, 29 catches, 61 yards, 1.89 yards per route. He's a 6'1", 182 boundary receiver, but now you're basically just looking that we can reverse this regression and get him back to the 4-star elite freshman season we saw in 2022. He's a senior now. They also have Xavier Thomas back on the roster. He was a transfer in last year's class. His best season came in 2023 with Mississippi State. 40 catches, Dropped all the way to 23 last year. He's 5'10", 195, out wide receiver. This just happens sometimes when you play at schools like Mississippi State. You can be the number one or number two receiver, get an offer to transfer up, fly a little too close to the sun, and don't actually continue that production, which is what happened to Xavier Thomas. The rest of the receiving room is a black box. 4 stars, Chris Hilton and Kyle Parker, have been hurt. No idea what we're getting out of them. Jelani Watkins and Kylan Billio have been non-factors. They have 8 snaps combined. They do have an interesting transfer in Destin Hill, who was hurt all last year. He comes over from Florida State. But in 2023, the former 4-star went 6 catches on 19 targets. Maybe they turn all the way to true freshmen 4 stars, Teron Francis and Phillip Wright. They have, I think, a pretty secure top-end wide receiver position. I'm just not sure what they're going to do if there's a receiver. There's a lot of names, but not much production here. I think people maybe will overrate this group a little bit compared to some others in this conference, especially because Nick Anderson's coming off a severe injury. Darian Brown's just flat out been bad the last 2 years. Can he get back to 2022? I think he can. Kentucky was a disaster, but it's still a projection. It's not something we've seen in a while with either of them. Tight end. You lose Mason Taylor to the NFL and you bring in Bauer Sharp. A lot of people will probably anoint him the next Mason Taylor. He comes from Oklahoma, previously with Southeastern Louisiana. He's 6'4", 247. He had a breakout season last year, if you want to call it that, 42 catches for 324 yards, which is not very efficient, and he's a horrible blocker. So you go out and you look at the overall efficiency metrics for Bauer Sharp. I think a lot of people are going to be really alarmed to hear that his production was in the 34th percentile. And I think you could also argue he only has 40-plus catches because Oklahoma loses their top 6 receivers to injury last year. And they're forced to throw more to the tight end, who's a fifth-year senior coming from the FCS, not recruited. This is a tough one for me, projection-wise. I would rather just play Trey Green, which I think they may end up doing regardless, because he's bigger, more athletic, and flashed a lot more than Bauer Sharp last year. I mean, you want 2 tight ends, everyone does. But Trey Green, 6'7", 245, he's maybe the most athletic player on this team. Athletic enough to play on the LSU basketball team. He had 13 catches for 101 yards last year, 4 scores. Started 1 game, 6 catches for 53 yards and a pair of touchdowns in the bowl game. So an awesome player with good size. I just want to see him develop, former 4-star, rather than go to the FCS transfers. Like, just let's pass on that and develop our true ceiling. They also had Donovan Green from Texas A&M. Injuries have ruined his career a little bit. He was a Texas A&M breakout in 2022, missed all of 23 with an injury, only played in 2 games last year, but former 4-star, had a freshman breakout, 6'4", 265, so maybe he can factor in. Overall, tight end's a pretty strong position. This should be a good pass-catching group, especially if you can coax the ceiling out of Trey Green. Bauer Sharp's bringing the floor, and then Donovan Green's the black box. Offensive line. They lose 4 starters, including their stud, Will Campbell. They've been all over the place this spring. It seems like they're just holding guys out when they have nicks, trying guys out at positions, trying to find their best 5, which I get. But it does make a really tough projection this time of year. We just have seen players line up at all the positions, line up with the first and second team, and we don't really know who they're going to go with because of the turnover. They do have some experience back. Left tackle is not one of those positions. Right now, the projection is 4-star redshirt sophomore Tyree Adams. He played 139 snaps last year. Most of those did come at left tackle, but also played a guard a little bit. He was a little below average on that sample, but I mean, highly recruited player, just hasn't gotten his chance yet with all the studs they had last year. Left guard, they do return 438 snaps from Paul Mubenga, who was absolutely atrocious last year. This is about half the snaps a normal starter plays, and he allowed 23 quarterback pressures and couldn't run block whatsoever. Unless he vastly improves, this former 3-star probably should not be on the field, but I don't think that's a given. His production was in the 22nd percentile for offensive linemen last year. So not a good place to start. And even if you project some movement forward, which we have him projected nearly in the 38th percentile for production. he would have to take such a step forward from the 22nd percentile that it's just not the most likely that he's going to be a good player. And honestly, DJ Chester, their center, falls into a similar bucket. He played 925 snaps last year. He allowed 24 QB pressures, but horrible run blocker. DJ Chester's production was in the 27th percentile, which was a big step back. He played a handful of snaps in 2023 and didn't look that bad. But 27th percentile is absolutely atrocious for this player. I think you're immediately looking at some transfers to potentially play over them both, or just some youth. They do bring in 2 transfers. Braylon Moore comes in from Virginia Tech, started the last 2 years, allowing 18 combined pressures with above average run blocking numbers. He could maybe play guard too if you find he's better at one of those positions, or you're just trying to get your best 5 on the field, and that includes DJ Chester. I don't think it should, but maybe it does. Then you have Josh Thompson from Northwestern, started the last 2 years as well. Only allowed 8 pressures last year after 27 in 2023, so awesome numbers. One of them's in the Big Ten, one of them was in the ACC. SEC is probably a little more difficult than the Big Ten, far more difficult than the ACC. But I mean, the players that you had on the field were just so bad. So there's not that much you could do to hurt them, I think. The other tackle position, right tackle, just as unproven as left. Weston Davis, probably the favorite redshirt freshman, 4-star, only played 20 snaps last year. There are a few other options. Bo Bordelon, he's a former 3-stars, played a little bit. A lot of former 4-stars. Carius Kern, Ethan Callaway, Solomon Thomas, Tyler Miller, Ori Williams. I think you should just force some of these guys, as long as they're not undersized and need to gain weight or something like that, onto the field. You just can't have the level of play that Mubenga and Chester put out for you. If the reason you squander NFL draft picks like Will Campbell and you can't run the ball is you just have these players that aren't just weak links. When you're in the 20th and 30th percentile of production on the offensive line at your position, as far as pressures allowed and missed run blocks, it craters your entire unit, especially with the positions next to each other, left guard and center. You had just a chasm. Didn't matter what your tackles were doing when that's what you put on the guard and center position. On defense, LSU did lose their top 2 edge rushers, Braden Swinson and Savion Jones. Their top returner is a sophomore 4-star, Gabriel Relaford. He only played 153 snaps last year, but was good on those very small pass rushing opportunities. They add Jack Pyburn from Florida, 334 snaps last year, 8 pressures, pretty good run defender. He's going to play. And a couple more transfers they bring in to fill out this group. Patrick Payton from Florida State regressed majorly last year. He had 44 pressures in 2023 that dropped all the way to 26. Similar drop in run defense numbers, and the only thing that changed is they lost NFL players Jared Verse and Braden Fisk. Sometimes that happens. You're playing alongside NFL players that draw more attention. It opens up lanes for you. The center, you become the center of attention. Your production drops. That happened to Patrick Payton. So hopefully he can regain form. They also had Jamari Butler from Nebraska. He was solid, played over 350 snaps the last 2 years. Good pressure numbers for him. A couple 4-stars, Damian Shanklin and CJ Jackson in the last 2 recruiting classes. Ed should be pretty good. This is a unit that has a lot of, when it's not actual on-field production returning, it's at least high recruits, good transfers. Still, they were 11th in pass rush. This is a lot to live up to. Inside, they lose Parashand and Gio Paez. Not really much. I don't think those are big departures. Top returners are Ahmad Bro, 292 snaps, and Dominic McKinley, 146. McKinley's a former 5-star. He played fewer games, but was more productive than Bro, who was a 3-star. This puts them, I think, in a pretty good spot up front. You also presumably get back Jacoby and Gulleroy, who was hurt just 6 snaps into week 2. Played a rotational defense tackle role in 2022 and 2023. Very good against the run. He's 320 pounds. It's a big reason why you saw the run defense struggle last year. They didn't have a good interior presence. Coming into the year, we knew that was going to be a problem. They missed in the transfer portal, and then having Gulleroy get hurt did not help at all. Forced in, freshman 5-star. But they should be better. All these guys are back. And for good measure, they add a former transfer from Texas, 4-star, Sidier Mitchell. Hasn't played much, but good overall quality recruit. Incoming freshman class brings in 3 4-stars, Zion Williams, Brandon Brown, and Walter Mathis Jr. So they should be deeper on the interior. I think this is a pretty good defensive line, even though it's young. Linebacker is an experienced position, also getting back an injured Harold Perkins, which should help considering they lost Greg Penn III. Perkins tore his ACL in week 4 last year. Very, very weird player. Had the electric freshman season where basically he was an edge rusher. He had 41 QB pressures that year, but he's 6'1", 225, and they've basically changed his position, brought him back to off-ball linebacker, which makes sense. He's just flat out too small to be an edge rusher, but he's really struggled as a run defender. He's been taken advantage of in coverage. He has seen his efficiency decline 3 straight years now. Last year was only a 4-game sample, but it wasn't good in those 4 games. I'm just not sure what we get out of him. And he's a player that needed development considering the position change. And now that's been stymied by an ACL tear where he's been rehabbing for the last year. What do we get out of Perkins? I'm not sure. They also have Whit Weeks back. He's played over 1,000 snaps the last 2 years. Really good run defender. Not so great in coverage. Allowed nearly 80% of the targets in his coverage to be completed. But he did lead the team with 125 tackles. Good player, Whit Weeks. Behind them, they have West Weeks, Devon Keys. Keys is a former 4-star. He should play more. And then they have a lot of 4-stars coming in. Charles Ross II, Jaden Breaker, Tylen Singleton, Kalaj Cobbin, Zach Weeks, CJ Jim Coyley, Keelan Moses. They're all from the last 2 recruiting classes. This is a deep linebacker position. You're just not sure about the ceiling. You'll need some development from both Weeks in coverage and Perkins across the board as he's changed positions. Defensive back. They lose 3 of their top 5. Their top corner, Zy Alexander, is gone. That leaves just one full-time cornerback in Ashton Stamps. He was above average, 59% completion in his coverage, 9 PBUs. That's a good place to start. And then they attack to the corner. I think you can find at least one starting corner out of these players. It's Mansour Delane from Virginia Tech, Tamarcus Cooley from NC State and Maryland, Jakeem Jackson from Florida. The best candidate to start is Delane. He's a 3-year starter. His coverage numbers did drop last year. He allowed 570 yards into his coverage, which was almost as much as he allowed in 22 and 23 combined, which is a problem. And that is another problem that you just run into when you use snaps and starts to project how good a team is moving forward. Everyone was assuming VT was going to be this awesome team because they returned so many starters. Not everyone takes a step forward. Yes, data will show you that development year over year does help you. You do get better generally, but not everyone does. Delane's one of those examples. So like the wide receiver position, like some other positions we talked about, they're going to be banking on him regaining form. Cooley, he's basically a slot corner. He started there with NC State last year, 7 PBUs, 57% completion allowed. And then Jakeem Jackson, former 4-star, has never played more than 113 snaps with Florida. But overall, your depth is a little better at corner, and that doesn't even consider they got 174 snaps from PJ Woodland. They got 132 from Javin Toviano, who's played a lot actually in his career now. They also have a 5-star, DJ Pickett, coming in. 4-stars, Aiden Anley, Michael Turner Jr. from the last 2 classes. Corner should be better. We just need Blake Baker and the staff to coax a little more out of this defensive backfield. Improvement last year was good. They're going to need more. Safety, they have Jardine Gilbert. He's a former 4-star, has started 2 of the last 3 years. That began in 2022 with A&M. Then he was injured. Last year, he struggled mightily with LSU, so we'll need some development, regain his form. 4-star Deshaun Spears played 205 snaps. He's a good run defender, probably the best candidate to start alongside Gilbert. Also have 4-stars, Joel Rogers, Austin Osbury, Jacob Bradford, Juwan Johnson, Jace Thomas, all on the roster. It's the same thing. We just need to develop some of these guys if we're LSU. They have too many players that have struggled after coming in as elite recruits. Special teams, they need to be better here. They were outside the top 100. Ramos, their kicker, is not one of the problems. He has started the last 3 years. Last year, he was the 36th most efficient kicker in college football. Only missed 1 extra point. Did miss 6 field goals, but they were all beyond 30 yards. And he has pretty good leg strength. He was 9 of 13 on 40-plus yarders last year, which is a good spot if you're LSU's kicking game. But overall, to sum up this team, I think the major question is they're relying on developing young players. And for their transfer class, they are hoping players that were once studs can regain their form. And I think they can, but it is a lot to bet on if you're an LSU fan this season, especially considering the schedule is not easy. I'll bring you there right now. So we have Clemson to open the year at Clemson. Easily the toughest non-con game for this team. Your other non-con games are against Louisiana Tech, Southeastern Louisiana, good revenge game for Bauer Sharp, and then Western Kentucky in week 13. So minimum 3-1, maximum 4-0. LSU's probably going to be a slight underdog. This is the best Clemson team we've probably seen since 2020, and it's not because they've recruited or anything. They just returned nearly every player on the roster. So that should be an epic duel between Klubnik and Nussmeier right away. In conference, the schedule is by no means easy. I think there are more difficult ones, but you have to play both Alabama and Texas A&M, dodge Texas and Georgia. How does this happen every show? It's 6 a.m. and the police come by. Anyway, we have Texas and Georgia not on the schedule. Alabama and Texas A&M on the schedule. Those are your top 4 teams in the conference. The only bottom feeders are Vanderbilt and Arkansas. So a lot of this is going to come down to the middle teams in the SEC. Your trip to Ole Miss, South Carolina at home, Oklahoma, your game to close the year, traveling there. This is likely to be a team somewhere between the 8 and 11 win range. 11 wins would be extremely optimistic considering they're playing 3 top 10 teams this year. And then dependent on how some of the other SEC teams shake out, this could either be a good year for LSU or a bad year. I would set their win projection around 9 right now, considering all the changes in the roster, what they need to come together, and what they play this year. But that will do it for the LSU breakdown. Thank you guys for watching. We'll be back again soon. I forget the next team. Ole Miss. Until then, appreciate you. Have a good day, and we'll see you soon.